France has been in the spotlight in recent weeks due to massive protests and strikes against proposed changes to the country's pension system. The controversy has led to heated debates and even a political crisis, with President Emmanuel Macron resorting to special constitutional powers to push through his plans. The proposed changes include raising the minimum retirement age and reducing benefits for certain public sector workers, which has prompted a rare show of unity among all trade unions. But why are pensions such a political flashpoint in France? And what is at stake for the country's cherished model of social protection? In this video, we'll delve deeper into the French pension system and the ongoing protests and strikes that have shaken the country. So let's start with the beginning. The pension system in France is based on a pay-as-you-go model, where current workers pay for the pensions. It is a highly valued system in France, with politicians referring to it as a pillar of the country's social protection model. However, the system has been under financial strain due to demographic changes such as an aging population and declining birth rates, as well as increasing life expectancies. The French government faces significant challenges in making its pension system financially viable. The country's national debt has risen to 112% of GDP, compared to 98% before the COVID-19 pandemic, due in part to pension spending. Furthermore, in 2000, 2.1 workers were paying into the system for every retiree. In 2020, that ratio had fallen to 1.7, and in 2070 it is expected to drop to 1.2. The French government has been reforming its pension system for decades, given the country's low retirement age and high pension spending, which amounts to almost 14% of its economic output. And to address these issues, Macron's proposed pension changes aim to unify the complex French pension system by getting rid of the 42 special regimes for sectors ranging from rail and energy workers to lawyers. The changes also included an increase in the minimum general retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2027, and an accelerated increase in the number of years of work required to qualify for a full pension that is around €1,200, and to create a surplus of billions of dollars that will fund early retirement for those in physically demanding jobs. Macron argued that these changes were necessary to keep the pension system financially viable. The new pension reform has been met with widespread protests and strikes as people fear the negative impacts it will bring upon their lives. The reform threatens to dismantle the current pension system, replacing it with a single, points-based one that many argue will be detrimental to various sectors of society. Before we continue, if you enjoyed this video so far, please take a moment to hit that like button below and subscribe to our channel for more content like this in the future. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us create more helpful and informative videos. Thanks for watching. Economically, the proposed pension reform sparks grave concerns surrounding its vague nature and potential financial inequality among citizens. Critics worry that the new points-based system may disregard an individual's work experience or industry-specific requirements. This would lead to unfair discrepancies in how pensions are awarded, and penalties for certain careers and situations might arise. Additionally, critics foresee an increase in the retirement age necessary for a full pension, which could disproportionately affect older workers who have less adaptability to the job market. From a social standpoint, citizens are distressed by the potential loss of accrued benefits under the new system. The current pension system ensures stability for its beneficiaries by guaranteeing pensions based on an employee's best 25 years of income. This change means future pensioners may receive lower pensions due to career fluctuations or periods of instability. Further fueling social anxieties is this uncertainty towards how pensions will be calculated under the reform. It remains unclear if inflation pressures and economic downturns will be considered while determining payouts. However, the proposed changes have faced strong opposition from trade unions, who organized some of the biggest demonstrations in decades. Protests have been ongoing since the start of the year, with transport workers, energy workers, dockers, teachers, and public sector workers holding strikes. The trade unions argue that the overhaul will penalize low-income people in manual jobs who tend to start their careers early, forcing them to work longer than graduates, who are less affected by the changes. Opinion polls show that 2/3 of French people oppose the pension changes and support the protest movement. Macron initially tried to make changes to the pension system during his first term in office in 2019. His plan at that time was to unify the pension system without raising the retirement age. However, protests against those proposals lasted longer than any strike since the wildcat workers' stoppages of 1968. Macron's changes were eventually shelved at the start of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020. But Macron's decision to use special powers to force the pension changes through without a parliamentary vote highlights his difficult position in parliament. His centrist grouping failed to win an absolute majority in parliamentary elections last June, leaving him with no choice but to rely on lawmakers from the right-wing party, Les Republicains, to back the pension changes. However, despite weeks of negotiations, the numbers did not add up. Opposition politicians have called for a vote of no confidence in the government, which could lead to a cabinet reshuffle or a snap general election. Whether or not the motion of no confidence passes depends on how opposition parties, who are radically against one another, might group together. The radical left does not want to join with Marine Le Pen's far-right party. The political implications arising from this unilateral decision-making process cannot be understated either. The lack of consultation with relevant stakeholders, such as trade unions, intensifies distrust between the government and citizens. Instead of fostering unity and public understanding on this critical issue, it has led to nationwide protests as people feel excluded from decisions affecting their future. Moreover, the strain on public services resulting from mass strikes negatively impacts everyday life in France. Protesters have taken to the streets in numerous cities across France, causing significant disruptions and getting into clashes with the police. The protests have even affected transport and public services, with some unions going on strike. The protests have continued despite government attempts to negotiate with unions and calm tensions. The pension reform remains a heavily debated topic in France, with supporters of the reforms arguing that they are necessary for a financially sustainable pension system. Meanwhile, the protesters show no signs of backing down, with unions calling for more strikes and rallies. The protests in France have become a symbol of the opposing forces of the state and the people. In conclusion, France's proposed pension reforms have been a hotly contested issue that has sparked mass protests and strikes throughout the country. President Emmanuel Macron's decision to use special constitutional powers to force through the changes without a parliamentary vote has further fueled public outrage and political tension. The pension system is seen as a crucial element of the country's model of social protection, and any proposed changes are likely to be met with resistance. The current situation remains uncertain, with opposition politicians calling for a vote of no confidence in the government and trade unions continuing to organize strikes and protests. It remains to be seen how this issue will be resolved and what impact it will have on France's political landscape in the coming months. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Until next time, take care of yourself. Peace.